I'm glad you're here because it makes it possible. There's a towel right over there. I'm going to pick it up. Makes it possible for me to get out of the water. I am Dorothy Wilhelm. This is the Swimming Upstream Radio Show. And each month we try to introduce you to people that you certainly wouldn't meet anywhere else. This segment, of course, is called Generation Gap. So that means that we have Ray Miller Still here, who is the editor of the Enumclaw Courier-Herald, right? And Jason Falls, who is the editor of our show. so that all works out good. Oh, and then I get to explain myself, sort of. And I am a member of the quiet generation. And nobody ever believes that, but we were the ones that followed the rules and did our best and believed in government. We're pretty boring people. Ray, explain yourself.
Well, I'm a millennial, born 1991, so I'm toward the younger end of that scale. But we started not believing in government, and if you think that we're bad at that, you should see the next generation.
Yeah. Well, that's actually true. Next generation, the Jason Falls.
So I'm Generation X, Gen X. Ray was born the year I graduated from high school. Yeah, makes me feel real old. But Gen X, I think we're still very attentive to politics, but I kind of have to turn the finger back on my generation and say, I think a lot of the vitriol and whatnot that you have out there on the internet this day is probably a good portion of it is because of Gen X, because we don't really care what other people think. We're kind of self-starters and self-reliant. And so if somebody else comes up with a different opinion, we're more apt to say, I don't give a shit, get out of my face, than other generations. And so, unfortunately, I think my generation might be partially to blame for some of what's going on in the world today, but that's what we think about politics.
Well, what about the person that you don't give a shit about? I mean, are they learning anything?
No, yeah. Gen X is just we're very sort of self-contained. You got to remember, we were latchkey kids. Our parents kicked us out. Yeah. We were raised on, neglect and the garden hose. That's
that garden hose.
that's how we learned how to be in the world. And so I think we're very self-efficient, self-reliant, and I think are probably more self-confident than a lot of generations too in general. But I also think that we grew up in an era where we saw the way media and politics were supposed to work, pre-1980s when the world started to fall apart. We remember those years. And I think when we see what's happening today, a lot of us are just kind of throwing up our hands and saying, this is not how it's supposed to be. Yeah. But I don't think we really know what to do about it.
And you're the ones that are pretty much in charge. I mean, I think a lot of Congress are even older than you guys, but you're the ones running the show right now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we are the majority of the workforce and we're the driver of the economy. But you're right. The people in power typically are going to be our parents' generation still, because we won't set age limits on offices and things like that.
And that's an interesting thing. Do you think we should?
I definitely think we should. First of all, I'm in charge. I'm in favor of term limits for any office anywhere. More than 2 terms, if you can't make your impact in whether it's 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, whatever 2 terms is, get out of the way. Let somebody else, come in and do it. I think there should be term limits on congressmen and on senators or on representatives, both sides of Congress, at the national and at the state level. And so I'm in favor of that for sure. And I do think, no offense, Dorothy, or anyone else who's over the age of 75 or 80 or whatever age limit they want to put it on, I definitely feel like for certain elected offices, there should be a ceiling. It's like, hey, you know what? Statistically speaking, you're probably going to be in this category of whether it's memory loss or aging or whatever. I think we need to start to draw a line there and say, if you're 85 years old and, you scooting around the Capitol building, you don't get to stay very long. You don't get to
scooting along. Okay.
One thing.
Well, and keep in mind, I don't mean to interrupt, but keep in mind, I am in the district that is currently one of our Kentucky senators is Mitch McConnell, who is who I'm referring to.
Well, no, actually, I'm not offended at all because we're old. But what I'm thinking of is, well, what I was really thinking was poor Joe Biden. He was exactly that person, you know. And there's no question, the further we get away from poor Joe, the more you realize he couldn't do it, but the current orange person can't do it either. So, and there are so many of the very elderly. And the interesting thing is, the younger, and they don't have to be very young, persons that are running for office or in office really have great ideas. And I mean, they may not be able to make them work, but at least they're doing something. Ray, as a newspaper person, you've got to see things differently than we do.
I do, yes. And I do just want to point out an observation I just made. Jason, I think this is the first strong opinion you've really ever given on this show.
Okay.
I'm surprised it's this one. I gotta say I disagree with term limits because I see people. I know you're talking about like states and up, but I see how hard it can be even on a local city level. How hard it can be in 4 years to get your feet under you and know how the system works. If you set a term limit for, if you have a 2-term limit, you barely scratching the surface of the influence you can eventually have in the state or in Congress. Additionally, like I look at a lot of races, a lot of county races, a lot of state races. Not a lot of them go unopposed. There are some times, we get the Washington governor's race where 13 people are going to run. 11 of them are clowns. Yeah. And it really is going to be a race between 2 people. I see state ones where it like you're going to run out. You are. So you're just going to run out of people who don't want to be elected.
Sure.
So yeah.
my only pushback there, Ray, would be that if you set term limits and someone who is elected to Congress, aka Mitch McConnell, who's been there, I think 40 years, right? Then what you do is you tear down the political action committee lobbyist machine that currently works, and the system has to work differently. Because if someone gets elected and they're only going to have, let's say, 2 terms as a senator is 12 years. They're only going to have 12 years. So in 12 years, they got to get a lot of stuff done. So it can't be as much you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, because they don't have enough time to build that legacy of basically oligarchy or whatever you want to call it, where it's just a couple of, pools of people controlling the entirety of government.
No, that is very true. We have too many special interests involved in government right now, and having term limits could absolutely break apart that power. I would also say that it could make you susceptible to special interests because you're brand new into the game. So personally, like, we got to try it out. Some state has to try it out once before we eventually move it on. We can't make a whole change all at once. And this is why I think, we have a 2-party system. That's rough. We get something like the Green Party or the IWW, and they want to get into the presidency. I'm like, you got to start local, city council, then state, then Congress. And like, that's how you evolve a political movement. Like, don't just go straight for the top. That's not going to work. And we got to try things out like that. We got to try term limits. We got to try a different way of voting. I do like ranked voting. I would much prefer to do something like that than just a ticket, just one or the other. Yeah, I mean, we can keep going on all about this. But I did want to ask Dorothy. You were alive during the.
I haven't been alive.
Well, and Jason, I suppose if you graduated in 1991, then you were not old enough then for the Vietnam protests, but Dorothy, you were. Can you give me some sort of idea of what those protests were like, if you were at all involved or saw anything, versus what you see now?
Honey, I think you can say I was involved. My husband fought in Vietnam for 3 years.
I would consider that a ticket into the club, yes.
Yeah, and I'd be glad to say a word about that. It was in what's his name, Gump, had a really good depiction of the Vietnam protests. I just want to say about the term limits. I think you've got to, we got to get to them, and we've got to keep to them. Got to get rid of the older. It isn't that they're older. It isn't they're older, but it is that they cannot be moved. You know, you get once they're in place with all their minions, you can't get rid of them. I lived through the Roosevelt years, and he did a lot of good, yes, but you cannot run a democracy with people who have been in power that long. And the other thing to keep in mind all the time, I've also lived through the years in Taiwan when Chiang Kai-shek, the Chinese incursion had just happened. And I have seen a truck come by in the morning and pick people up off the street and take them out to the airport, the racetrack to shoot them. We don't want that. And there's no way, of course, once it's a dictatorship, you can't do anything, but you can stop it on the way. In my impassioned opinion, you know how impartial I am. We've got to stick to term limits. We've got to get, even the old folks, I mean, they can't help being old folks, but I think we've got to get rid of them. Now, what did you want to know about Vietnam?
I just want to, because I want a better picture of what it was like back in the 60s and 70s protests in the Vietnam War and the protests that are happening now. Because I've heard a lot of people say that what the kind of protest that's happening now is unheard of. And I go, probably not, but you're young and you don't remember Vietnam, but you do.
Well, yeah, I do. And what they're saying is right as far as they know, but it's wrong. Because you've got apples and oranges going on.
Mm-hmm.
What you've got to remember is that during the Vietnam War, the soldiers were, there's somebody knocking on the wall. I don't know why. Soldiers were in uniform, and they were dying in pretty large numbers. And I remember wrapping my little boy, Ross, you've seen Ross, in his daddy's flight jacket at night, and telling him he would put his arms around him just like that when he came home. That's different, you know. And we were lucky he came home. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there has never been anything like this. They're right in that there's not been protests like this for what we might call a period of peace. Mm-hmm. But there have certainly been protests. And you always, I think, got to say, yeah, but then what? Okay. You remember, Jason, we had a pretty good thing. I think maybe it's coffee chat. I don't know. Anyway, my son Stephen has kind of organized some protests in Seattle. In fact, you ought to talk to Stephen. You'd like him. Oh, you wouldn't, you know. Anyway, but he has done a piece with us on how you organize. You know, if you want to make phone calls and that kind of thing, what you do. How you manage the calls and all that kind of thing. Went very well, was very well accepted, and I'm now a year later, and so it's gone on a year. We had one person on that just had followed what he said, Joella Oldfield, we know her. But we had another gal on, and I thought this was so good for the whole, she was about your age, I'd say, Ray, maybe a little younger. And she said she was just horrified, not horrified, but so shy that she couldn't possibly make calls to strangers whom she had little regard for. I mean, it wasn't like she was afraid of them, but she didn't, you know, she just couldn't do it. What she did then was organize a group. She puts the calls together. She organizes who to call it, and they call. And so there are ways of doing it that will mean something. But it isn't that it's not that it's never happened before. It is that it's never happened before for this reason. But
okay.
But you know, I keep going back to that time in Taiwan and to the little boy, you know. Once that's happened to you, you don't look at things the same ever again. You just can't. So I don't know where you're going to go with that, Ray, but you asked the next question.
Well, I mean, you said at the beginning of the segment that your generation believed in government, and government did help you, get out of the depression.
Yeah.
So I see there's a lot of good reasons why you go, yes, the government is there to help us out. Do you still believe that? Do you still think that the government is something you can rely on?
No, today, gosh, no. The orange person is ruining everything. But aside from that, no, I think right now, I think we're broken. I think we're fixable, but I think we're broken because term limits, yes. We're protesting, but I have yet to talk to anybody who knew what to do next. I think it's good that we're protesting. I think it's good that we're getting our ideas out. I saw last week where my other kids they live in Minneapolis, and so there's some little worry about that. But in Minneapolis last week, 34,000 people signed up to learn how to take care of in their homes, the neighborhood, how to take care of people, what to do, and that kind of thing. And that's really good. But then, it should be done. But then you got to say, yeah, but what next? What can you do?
A lot of people say national strike is what comes next. Just don't work. Stop the economy in order to show a group effort, group strength there. So I guess my next question is, what do you think about a national strike?
I don't think it'll work.
I
don't think it'll work because all of the Trump supporters will keep going to work. And there's enough of them that the economy won't crumble. It'll slow down, but it won't crumble.
Well, we're in a heck of a mess, guys.
we as with the theme of the show, we do sometimes end up a little more lost than found.
Well, true. It's really, but I do think this really shows the difference, between my generation and yours. And I think like the opinions you're expressing they make a lot of sense. But I think you have to see, it wasn't even so much that they were dying. That was awful enough. But everything was ruined. It was, there wasn't anything going on. And we had just come out of another war. I mean, we just come out of, it was like at that time, well, we're never going to see anything else because there'd been Korea, and then there's, for the funny thing is now and I myself am in just total opposition to virtually everything that's happening right now, yet I have the feeling that we can fix it, that we can come together, that we can make changes that will be uplifting and supportive. And I didn't always have that feeling before. I think at least we're talking about it. It's like, Coffee Chat and Change the World, a beloved show. I was telling someone, and he was laughing at me, a thing I'm used to. And he said, well, have you changed the world yet? And I said, well, yeah, because we're talking about it. We didn't talk about it before, So I think maybe it's the same kind of thing. But now we're running low on time. So you two guys who represent the future have got to each give us one, I think, inspirational, helpful, and an idea or a thing to do.
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
Hey, just to carry on the conversation about the political sort of atmosphere and whatnot. As pessimistic and as contrarian as I am and my generation tends to be, I do think that what we are starting to see with the protests, and also in the popularity polls and things like that of the current administration, there is hope that change will come and change will happen. And if it doesn't come by the end of this, for the next presidential switchover, we're all in trouble, because at that point, he's basically changed all the rules. And then the government doesn't, have any rules to follow at that point. So I do think that change is going to come. I think we're going to see, new leadership is going to come into the country. I hope that new leadership comes in. There's changeover at the congressional level as well, just because I'd like to see us go the other direction for a while. And I think I'm optimistic that it'll come. And that's hard to say from a Gen Xer because we're generally pessimistic about everything. But
you are.
There's hope.
It's not often where all three of us are going to agree on the same thing here, especially across generations and after the experiences we have. But I can also say that I'm optimistic about the direction the country seems to be heading in. There has some energy towards the policies that I support. But I think it's important to have these conversations with some people. I've been to several protests covering them, and there's always someone there who's trying to have a conversation with one of the protesters, trying to figure out why are you here, and they never get any good answers. You gotta find a different time and place to sit down and have these conversations, and you just got to realize that it's a conversation. You don't have to get emotionally involved. You don't have to, you just have to listen. That's what it is. And I feel like, we all three of us are able to listen to each other. It looks like we generally agree on things, but I bet you if we really delve deep, we'll find some things we definitely don't agree on. But it's just a conversation. And being able to put yourself out there and say, all I want is a conversation can be difficult. But, if you really want to know, and if you really want to start changing things on an individual level, you got to start with that conversation.
Well, I know our Bill Lewis, who's on the show fairly often, says that just, have a discussion with someone you don't agree with. Mm-hmm. And I think, and what you'd find, what I think you do, that I hear, it isn't that we're ever going to agree, and we don't have to. Here's the beauty of it. Mm-hmm. All we have to do is some way live in
the goal of the conversation isn't to change someone's mind. The goal of the conversation is to learn.
We understand sometimes, or sometimes there's areas of understanding. Mm-hmm. So that, and I think we'd be maybe looking for that. I think this has really been a lot better than I thought it would be. So I'm glad to take credit for it. I was going to give it to Ray, but no. But a long time ago, I read a book by Arch Obler, who was a radio, kind of like, I don't know who one of the big ones would be now, but he wrote radio plays. And he wrote this script called Why Aren't You Laughing? And the script was it was a lot like who's Star Trek, these explorers from another time came and found in the United States, not in the United States because they didn't know where they were, but they found this place that had at one time obviously had a thriving civilization. And apparently the monarch, the king or whatever of the civilization was a little mouse with big ears. And so Mickey Mouse, And so they couldn't find out too much about it, but what they could find out was that they had wonderful developments of all sorts. And they had the people had so much, and they had great education and all these terrific things. And then somehow, but you're not going to believe this, but they, you're going to think this is the funniest thing you ever heard, but they stopped caring. They stopped taking care of all these things. And now it's all gone. Isn't that the funniest thing you ever heard? Well, why aren't you laughing? And on that cheery note,
oh boy, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this has been Generation Gap, which is one of my personal favorites. Anyway, say goodbye, Ray, and say how to get in touch with you if you wish to be gotten in touch.
Oh, Raymond.still@courierherald.com.
Oh, that's very good. Mr. Falls.
There's not even any T in this anymore.
You can find me easily at fallsandpartners.com.
Fallsandpartners.com. Is the and?
Oh, actually, no, it's just fallspartners.com. There's no and.
See, I got that. I pay attention.
There you go.
Okay. And I'm Dorothy Wilhelm. This is the SOB Radio Network, and SOB stands for Spunky Old Broads. All of the hosts are women over 50, and I may be she. Okay, and we'll see you next time when Ray is going to choose a topic. Okay.